Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Hey everybody, future Matterhorn Matt here. Right off the bat, I'd just like to apologize for how quiet my microphone is in this episode compared to Alex's and compared to Rob's. I thought the levels were fine once we started recording, but as it turns out, after the fact, people on my Discord pointed out to me that the levels were indeed very low for my microphone. I'm pretty sure I maybe pseudo-fixed it halfway, maybe a quarter of the way through the episode, so yeah, I'd just like to apologize for that. Moving forward, all the levels will be 100% fine. Yeah, just like to apologize for that right off the bat before people point it out in the comments to me, or you guys know how it goes. But anyways, back to the episode. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to episode 98 of Matterhorn Mondays. I am your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm Alex the Historian.
And today on The Outpost, we are joined by none other than Mr. RobPlays himself. Why don't you say hello to everybody here?
Hi all, thanks for having me. I can feel like, have you guys been considering episode 100 like getting to the top of the Matterhorn because
okay. That's a real...
Or maybe, or is it like the basketball half court, inside it, or... I just feel like you guys are so close to this achievement.
I feel like every episode, it feels like me having to climb to the top of the Matterhorn and hike my way back down. Just, as it is. But yeah, so welcome everybody to episode 98 of Matterhorn Mondays. Well, I guess we should start off. I just hit my mic. I guess we should start off by saying, Mr. RobPlays, for those of you guys who are listening and watching who don't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and give the listening audience a brief explanation of what kind of videos you make?
Sure. So I have a channel that is kind of what I'd call mostly Disney history with some like Disney opinion pieces in there. Lately, I've been trying to get more into what I've been calling the history behind the history. So I like to look for little corners of the parks and kind of go into the history behind whatever that thing is referencing. So as an example, I've got videos that range from how Disney regularly controls mosquitoes on property to the history of an event such as like the bike tour that they ran one year from Tampa to Orlando that was kind of a failure. And then more recently getting into things like who is Little Egypt and what is the Hoochie Coochie and history outside of the Disney park that Disney fans might still appreciate as fans who see those references regularly within attractions and the rides. And so I do a video every week and just kind of ranges goes across that whole spectrum depending on what I'm feeling like every week.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful stuff. We've had Rob on the show a few times in the past, so I'm assuming most of you guys listening here are familiar with who he is, but his channel will be linked in the description nonetheless. Same with Alex's. And yeah, we got a great episode planned for you guys. We're going to be continuing on the discussion that we started last week with Alex and Mr. Orange Grove about I don't even know what to call it. I guess we'll get into it. The interchangeable screen attraction that we started talking about last week that just sort of broke the news this week. But before we get into any of that, I would like to give a special birthday shout out. If you guys would like to be wished a happy birthday live on the show, link is in the description down below to our Google Doc. Submit your name, submit your birthday. We will tell the world about it here on stream. But yeah, we got a very special birthday today. Mr. Mark, or TASG. I'm sure you guys know who Mark is. Alex and I are good friends with Mark. We met exactly a year ago today, which is the 20th, at the first meetup I did with Alex in Disneyland. I think the vlogs are up from that as well. Yeah, it was Mark's birthday. We did that meetup. He decided to tag along, and we've known each other ever since, yeah. Mark's become a really good friend of the channel and a really good friend of Alex and I. So everybody, big happy birthday in the chat to Mark, TASG. I'll link his channel down in the description down below because he does a lot of great stuff too as well. A lot of vlogs from the parks. And Mark Zuckerberg, no, not Mark Zuckerberg. I wish I knew Mark Zuckerberg. That'd be cool. But yeah, links to our Discord, Twitter, Instagram, all that jazz. You guys know the deal. Patreon will be in the description down below as always. And I'm going to start I'm trying to innovate on this podcast, you guys. I'm going to start reading off some of the 5-star, or I guess 4-star reviews that we have on the podcast on iTunes. Link is in the description too, if you'd like to leave a review of the show. We have one here, 5 stars, informative and entertaining. They have really well thought out opinions and express them well, exclamation point. And then we have one other one, 5 stars. Really,
I'm here to change that this week, by the way.
My God. We're going to be getting nothing but 2 stars, 3 stars from this episode. But we have a second one, 5 stars. Really enjoy the podcast, gents. Keep up the good work. Gotta catch it live sometimes. And yeah, if you guys don't know what the whole deal with the chat is on the screen, we live stream these podcasts every Saturday at 4 p.m. Disneyland time. Sometimes that'll fluctuate, and next week, actually, we're going to be having the Sweep Spot podcast as guests on our stream, and next week we won't be live at 4 p.m. Disneyland time. We'll be live at, I believe, 11 o'clock Disneyland time. So tune into both of my channels, main channel, Matterhorn Matt Streams channel for that. Very excited to have them on the show as well. And yeah, we got a great stream planned for you guys today, so let's get right into this week's News from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
All right, first bit of news from the Peak is a really groundbreaking, in my opinion. The Disney Skyliner opening date has been revealed for September 29th. I see Rob over there shaking his head like, yeah, excited for that.
I'm psyched. I'm excited for it.
We now present to you News from the...
It's a bit surprising to me that it's so late that it's opening. I feel like they would have probably wanted to have it open for Galaxy's Edge down here, or before Galaxy's Edge, I should say. Wait, I'm blanking. September 29th, right? I'm looking at the dates right? Okay, so yeah, Galaxy's Edge. I was thinking they'd want to have it open for Galaxy's Edge opening, but it seems like maybe they're not done with all of those stations yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming, I think. Skyliner, I guess I should point out, for those of you guys who don't know what the Disney Skyliner is, the Disney Skyliner is a new mode of transportation that will open just a month after Galaxy's Edge opens. It will transport guests, beautifully transport guests, let's see, between Epcot, Disney's Riviera, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Disney's Riviera Resort, Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort, and then it will split off to either go to either Hollywood Studios or the Art of Animation / Pop Century Resorts, and then back again. So very interesting. Hopefully this will usher in the new age of modern transportation for the Walt Disney property, because I know a lot of people are not big fans of the buses down there.
Here's my argument. Ready? I'm about to get you those 2 stars. I've been seeing, because they've been testing them a lot down here, and so you see them in action, and they move pretty swiftly. And so I think the big controversy has been that they're not going to have air conditioning in the cabins, and you think, well, Florida, it's going to be super hot in there, it's going to be like a sauna. But considering you're going to be at an elevated position, you're going to be moving at a pretty swift rate. And I think what was the estimates for the ride times? It was like from end to end, like 15 minutes or so, less so if you're heading to a hotel. So in my mind, it's like you can spend 15 minutes in a cab. That'll probably be as hot as it is outside. Or, you wait for a bus, which is going to take you 20 minutes, and then you're definitely outside where it's just as hot as the weather around you. So I think it's going to be, as long as it works smoothly, which I imagine it will. It's a brand new system. It's being developed by Doppelmayr, who's been doing this for over 100 years. Then I think it's going to be a really great way to move a lot of people very quickly.
I don't know. I personally have a different opinion on it. It seems to me like really tacky. Like where I live right next to the Orange County Fairgrounds, and we have this permanent ski lift, basically, that during the fair it transports you from one end of the property to the other. And but like whenever there isn't a fair, it just sits there all the time. And I don't know, this looks like almost exactly like it. I mean, granted, the one here is a ski lift and this one's more like a gondola, but nevertheless, it's just this hulking mass of cables and steel, and it just crisscrosses the property in a way that just doesn't look elegant or beautiful. It's like it's the opposite of like the monorail system, which looks elegant and beautiful, and then when the train crosses over the beamway, it looks like some futuristic train. But this looks like a string of like party lanterns that have just been like haphazardly put up. That's how I feel about it.
I think that's fair. I mean, just looking at the photo there that's up on the screen, like it's not, you're right, it's not a very elegant looking setup at all. I think I would have loved to have been in the meetings when they were developing something like this, because I do think it comes down to this sort of like form versus function idea, because obviously the monorails here are in pretty dire need of like attention and love. And as I talk to like different people about them and what could be done, do you just do all new monorails, do you expand, what do you do, it starts to become clear that like for as cool as the monorails look and how I think they've become just so iconic to both Disneyland and Disney World, they also like just pairing the systems side by side, you start to see how more efficient one is over the other. And that's when you have to start asking like, well, okay, where do we find that balance? And I hope part of it is, for as inelegant as the gondolas look, they do kind of feel tucked away because, aside from France, they're not very prominent at Epcot and Hollywood Studios. They're right at the front gate, but, from within the park, they're not going to stick out too much like a sore thumb. It really ends up being the resorts where they're mostly visible. And hopefully if they continue to expand on this or do more of this, they stay with that idea of not just sticking it in your face. But I don't know. I guess my question would be, do you think it's the form of it as a whole that's not very elegant, or is it what if they like changed the color scheme and made it less? Because like right now, you're right, it does kind of look like they've got all the different colors. It's very very Disney-esque in that it's super colorful, but like had they done maybe something a little more slicker with the paint scheme or the color of the towers, would that like improve it at all?
I don't think it's a matter of the paint scheme. I mean, granted, some paint schemes can look worse than others, but I think it's the shape of the system, the way that it looks as it crosses, the resort areas and the trees. It just looks like it impedes on the landscape rather than complements the landscape. And I suppose there's a lot of arguments to like the other systems that would have been, such as the shuttles and things like that, or maybe the monorail itself. I don't know. I just don't like the look of these gondola ski lifts anywhere in the world. I don't like the way they look.
That's fair.
Well,
I'm just hoping it alleviates the buses a little bit. That's all. I mean, like now that I'm local, I guess admittedly I'm not going to be taking much of any of these transports. But if it spreads out crowds, well, hopefully that's what it does.
Well, guys, that was just the first bit of news from the peak. So we got a really wonderful stream planned for you. Let's see, second bit of news from the peak. Marvel fans will be very excited about this one. Taika Waititi is returning to write and direct Thor number 4. Taika recently brought new life into the franchise with Thor Ragnarok in 2017, which it doesn't feel like it released in 2017. Feels like it was sooner than that. Very strange. But yeah, very excited about this. What's interesting is that he had already had a film in development at Warner Brothers called Akira, I believe is how it's pronounced. But I guess he sort of shelved that film for the time being to work on Thor for, you gotta make way for what's gonna bring in the big bucks, But anyways, yeah, I'm sure everybody's really happy about this. I know a lot of people were not actually big fans of Thor 3. With the comedy. I've seen people call the comedy cringy, stuff like that. I was a big fan of it personally. But yeah, last but not least for our news from the peak here. Guys, it's finally happening. I'm so excited to announce this to you. Mickey's Soundsational Parade ends its 8-year run at Disneyland Resort on July 17th. Can we all get a big clap, you guys, for Mickey's Sensational Parade finally going away. I feel like this was a long time coming. I've seen a lot of people not necessarily complain about the show, but it has shown its age in some areas. Like I said, the parade first debuted in May of 2011. So, Mr. Alex, what are your thoughts on Mickey's Sensational Parade finally glowing away, I guess?
I really love this parade. Like,
really?
Yeah, I mean, compared to a lot of other parades that have been before and after it, I prefer this one over the others, including Paint the Night. Like, I know Paint the Night was like everyone's favorite, but I really disliked Paint the Night. And Sensational is not the best parade Disney's ever made. But like I said, it's been the best one, in my opinion, that they've had in the last 20 years or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I do agree that it overstayed its welcome, not that it was necessarily a bad parade. I'm just happy that we're finally, hopefully, going to be getting something new. Rob, I don't know if you ever had the chance to experience Sensational Parade, have you?
So I've only been to Disneyland a handful of times, but I can tell you that they've all been within the last 8 years. And I'm not exaggerating when I say before sitting down to record this, I've never heard of this before.
Really?
So it was totally off my radar. I was skimming through the video of like the clips of it, of the article. But yeah, had never heard of it. So I had never seen it. Listen, we're in a bit of a parade drought over here, so
That's
the
true,
idea
that's
of
fair.
like being excited about any parade going away is hard for me. I'll take any parade. Like, send it over to us. We'll take it. Even if it's not a great parade, we'll take it for a couple of years because we need something over here. As long as I'm always cool with things going away if it means something new is going to follow. That's my stance for pretty much anything at any of the parks, and the parades are no exception. Yeah, I wasn't even aware because the clip I'm looking at is at night. So when was this running? Was this just like in between Paint the Night?
I think it was one of those daytime parades. I've never really heard of it running at night. I'm sure
maybe this is like a rare instance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm seeing it's mostly day here. Okay. So this is like the Disneyland equivalent of Festival of Fantasy?
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody down here, everybody who is a local who has been to California, Disneyland in California, will be happy to hear this news. It'd be nice to have a new refreshing parade, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, like I said, we got a great stream planned for you guys. But before we get into that, I did accidentally neglect one of your guys' favorite segments of the show, Matt Snaps, and I'm very thirsty. It's hot in my room, so I'm going to go ahead and pop open this Snapple for you guys. I'm trying to switch it up this week. I got let's see, what is this? A kiwi strawberry today instead of the normal peach that I have, so there's that. Rob's got his water over there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and pop this.
My Disney World $4 Dasani, but isn't actually $4 because I've quickly learned not to bother buying Disney water from Disney anymore.
So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pop this open. Oh, wow, get $5 off your MLB ticket at StubHub. I guess this is like a coupon on here. So I'll go ahead. I guess I'll paste the coupon code right up here in the edit. So here we go. I'll pop this open for you guys. I can't get it open. Oh my gosh, this is like sealed on here.
Come on,
There we
Matt.
go. I'm stronger than I look, I swear, but there we go. I'm very thirsty, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this in. And while I pour this in, let's go ahead and segue into our first main topic that I'd like to talk about. If you guys are fans of Galaxy's Edge, or not fans of Galaxy's Edge, you're going to like this segment. I would like to hear Mr. RobPlays', I guess, let's see, how do I want to do this? Well, I guess I should start off by saying, or asking if you've been to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland or not.
Unfortunately, no. And it was a mistake. Let's just call it that. I know they announced the dates, and I was like, well, it's just a couple of months between Disneyland and Disney World. It's not going to be that hard of a wait. And since it opened, it's been killing me that I haven't gone there yet. And I'm actually going to be out there for D23, but that is like literally days before it opens in Disney World. So once again, I didn't make plans to go to the parks because I was like, well, it's a few days, I could hold over. So I have not been to any Star Wars land yet, but I'm pretty excited for it when it opens over here.
Okay. Well, I guess that sort of answers the second question I was going to ask you, whether or not you'd be excited about Galaxy's Edge opening. So, let's see. I'd like to sort of dive into... Because with Galaxy's Edge in California, we've sort of had a few, I guess, a month or two to sort of let everything simmer down, let everything, settle. And I guess it's fair to point out that the crowds Disney expected for Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland did not appear. For the opening of Galaxy's Edge, and I'm very interested to hearing your guys' opinions on whether or not the crowds will show up for the opening of Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios, because as you guys may or may not know, I think we've said this on the show before, you will not need a reservation to get into the Galaxy's Edge land in Hollywood Studios like you did with Disneyland, and I guess. We've said this as well. We've said all this as well in the past, I'm sure. I guess Disney sort of did scare away a lot of the families trying to vacation into Disneyland during that period of Galaxy's Edge's opening, because Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland is almost not comparable to Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios, because Hollywood Studios is already like the worst park there is, I guess. And you can't really base those two together, because Disneyland is Disneyland, opening Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland is such a massive achievement compared to opening it in Hollywood Studios, whereas, in Hollywood Studios, Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland, it's just a carbon copy of the Disneyland version. So I'm very interested to hear your guys' thoughts as to whether or not we should expect a large crowd of people trying to get into the opening of Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios. So, as the local, why don't we start off with Mr. RobPlays himself?
I think they'll be bigger. It's interesting because they did announce, you're not going to need a reservation to get in the same way they did it at Disneyland. And in all fairness, you couldn't do that same system over here because rather than like 3 resorts, there are 22 or something resorts out there. So it just wouldn't work. But I still wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of capacity capping system that isn't just, I think they're going to try and avoid a sort of Hagrid situation where people are in line for 9 hours. So I can still imagine there's going to be some kind of way for them to control those crowds, which means I think the rest of Hollywood Studios is going to be pretty packed because as people are like mentioning here in the chat and stuff, like blackouts for annual pass holders aren't as strict here as they are over in California. I think you have a lot of people who plan their trips for Disney World regardless of what's going on. Like obviously the local versus vacationing ratio is way different between Disneyland and Disney World. So I think there are going to be a lot of families who are here when it opens just because that's when their vacation kind of falls onto those dates. And I think because it opened earlier in Disneyland and you had this not only a month for the real hardcore fans who wanted to see this place, see it in their I don't know. I like to call it a soft open because that's what it felt like, a soft opening, but that's their preview month or whatever. Because that existed, that opportunity existed, how many hardcore fans are you going to have who are coming all the way out to Florida just for this opening when they've pretty much experienced it all already? So I think it's going to balance it out a little bit. I think you're going to see less of a rabid fan, reaction, but I still think you'll just generally see more crowds because it's summer at Disney World, and that just tends to be the case anyway. And like you mentioned, it's a park that's a lot smaller and doesn't have a lot of other things to offer. So you're going to have people going to Star Wars Land just because, it's a big slice of what's there in that park.
Yeah. Alex, what about you?
I really don't know. I want to say that Galaxy's Edge will be super busy over there from day one, but at the same time, that's what I thought it would be like here. So I don't know. I mean, I suppose that there's going to be a lot more guests over there and stuff like that. And, people might assume that because it's the least popular park, that there's going to be less people there. So I don't know. There's a lot of factors at play.
Yeah. It's I think you raise a good point. Seeing the crowds at Disneyland's right now tells us, if anything, it's hard to guess this kind of thing. There's so many factors that play into it that we can't possibly guess. And not to mention, I think there's also the factor of how crowded does Disney want it to be. They're trying to sell this as their big new land. I think while we would go, okay, it's very successful if it's packed shoulder to shoulder and, there are long lines for everything. I think Disney consciously didn't want that to be the case. And so how much of it is, well, the crowds aren't there, and how much is it Disney controlling the crowds, whether it's, how many tickets they're selling, or over here, it'll be how many people maybe they let into the land through the gates. So, yeah, it's hard to tell. It's gonna be a weird balance between what they're trying to create and what it ends up naturally being anyway. And even then, we won't be able to guess it. I'll be there though. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and it also does sort of raise. I mean, we've already sort of seen the quote unquote fallout or ramifications from Disneyland not being as packed as Disney thought it would be for the opening of Galaxy's Edge. And I'm just like trying to picture in my mind, like, what if all those trolls on Twitter are right? What if Star Wars is dead? What if everybody does hate Star Wars? You guys know what I mean? And then nobody ends up showing up to the Hollywood Studios Galaxy's Edge's opening. That's just, kind of ringing in the back of my mind. I mean, obviously, Star Wars isn't dead. People will pay money to experience their childhood, basically.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of interesting to think what kind of cutbacks would be made if there aren't any big crowds at the Hollywood Studios opening. I mean, like I said, we've already seen I can't even count how many cutbacks we talked about in last week's episode at Disneyland. But it will be interesting to follow that opening. Let's see.
I mean, I think just to throw a thought in there too, like, I think one element we also have to consider is how many people avoided and were scared of Star Wars. Like, for years, as they were building up to this land, the talk was how crazy it's going to be. And I'm guilty of being a part of that. I remember talking about how I thought this was going to be like an unprecedented opening that we've never seen before. And when they announced the dates, there were people who were literally distraught because their vacation happened to fall on the opening and they thought their vacation was going to be ruined. So I do think there are a lot of people who are intentionally avoiding the parks at this point until things, calm down, whenever that ends up being. And in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the opening of Disney World in '71, where they intentionally picked the worst month, the worst day they could to make sure that they didn't have a repeat of Disneyland's opening. And it almost worked so well that it looked like the park was kind of a flop. And then a month or so later, holidays rolled around and crowds picked up, and you found out, nope, it wasn't a flop. It was just they were a little too good at their job. And then on top of that, I would just add that if the visual that Disney wants is that this place is packed and there's so much demand for the land, wouldn't there be other artificial ways to create that image? Because think of like Smuggler's Run. Isn't that correct me if I'm wrong, the basic ride mechanic is it's a bunch of rotating cockpits that they're loading in, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would stop them from saying, okay, we're only going to load half of these so that the lines get longer, so now we have a standby that's 4 hours, and wow, now the land looks a lot more crowded. It would almost, if I feel like they'd have those levers to pull if they wanted to try and make the place look more packed. I think they'd intentionally want it to look basically like this concept art where it's not this, kind of nightmarish vacation, crowd, so that more people are, prone to booking trips for the next year or so to go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is an interesting point. We haven't really brought up here on the show that Disney does have the power. I mean, it is Disney. They do have the power to, like Rob said, artificially inflate the wait times for Smuggler's Run. I think I've seen screenshots on Twitter where the line has been super long, and then like the next day, oh my gosh, it's only 20 minutes. The world is gonna end. But yeah, very interesting. Alex, do you have any final thoughts on this?
Just a few. So first, Chris with a K had mentioned in the chat that he was there last week, and there was 40-minute waits for the Falcon, and then Indiana Jones Adventure and Big Thunder were 60 to 120-minute waits. I was with you that day, Chris. And the thing is you have to remember that day was Disneyland's birthday. So naturally it was going to be busy that day because everybody wants to be there for Disneyland's birthday. It's a big event. So I have to keep that in mind. And as for James Casey NYC had said that the land is incredible, referring to Galaxy's Edge. Don't care if there's crowds or not. Well, the thing is, I think we should all care whether there are crowds because that will determine in the future what kinds of attractions that we get. So if a land is very crowded upon opening and is extremely popular, there's a good chance we'll get really good lands just like that one. But when there's very little crowds, the chances of you getting a land like that again are less likely. So it's kind of funny because we don't like the crowds, but we need the crowds in order to keep the lands and rides and attractions that we really like. Just to answer some people's questions.
Yeah, and someone else said in chat, where is it? Disneyland Paris vibes. I mean, I guess you could sort of kind of infer that from this, but I don't really think that this is really comparable to what happened with Disneyland Paris. I mean, I guess you could sort of make that connection, but anyways, very interesting topic. Like I said, here on the show, we do want to keep a very close eye on. I guess we should have a whole segment called Galaxy's Edge Watch or something like that, where we just talk about nothing but what's going on with Galaxy's Edge. Next week, you guys tune in for Galaxy's Edge Watch. Alex and I will be with our magnifying glasses looking at Galaxy's Edge, finding out what's wrong with it. Is Star Wars dead? Yeah, tune in next week, you guys. But anyways, let's see. There was a topic that Alex did want to bring up before we got into our big main topic, and I guess this can sort of fall under Alex in the Parks. He did send me, well, I guess first to start off, he did send me some very neat images from Disneyland yesterday. Let's see. I guess, Alex, you should go ahead and explain to everybody what these images are, where they are from, because they are really neat little posters.
Yes. So I was at Disneyland last week on July 17th, and so I was hanging out with a friend, and they had pointed out these posters that had shown up on the west side of the park. This is just 2 of 3 that I know of, and these 2 posters have appeared in Frontierland. So the one that says going to Montana, and it shows a picture of the buffalo, that was over by the Outfitters, right next to the Golden Horseshoe. As for the one that says Wyoming and Yellowstone National Park, that one was right outside of the Mercantile, which was the Davy Crockett's mercantile place. So what's interesting about these is that they say at the bottom, Adventures by Disney. These are tours that you can get through Adventures by Disney. And it's kind of funny because it's I don't really know how to react to that, because on one hand, it just creates this synergy between having one part of the company advertising into the other. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's Disney Vacation Club has been doing that at Disneyland for several years now. They've had kiosks all over the park advertising Disney Vacation Club and stuff like that. At the same time, these posters do fit into Frontierland in a way. But I think my main gripe with these posters is that in the old Frontier, people didn't go touring around America. They were settling places. And so it just doesn't really make sense to advertise touring when people didn't really care about that in the early 1800s, as well as the fact that at the very bottom of the posters, it gives the phone number
Yeah.
for for that. I'm like, that doesn't make. Actually, it's kind of funny. It says inquire by telegraph, and then it gives the phone number. I'm like, telegraph didn't have a number like that. So I don't know. It doesn't quite make sense in Disneyland. And yet you also can't get too mad at it being advertising, because it's like, well, Disneyland's been advertising a bunch of things since opening day. So I don't know. It's really mixed feelings. The third one, which I don't have a picture of because I forgot to take a picture of it, is in the queue of the Jungle Cruise. And it's an advertisement for, I want to say, a South American country. I want to say Venezuela. It showed pictures of toucans and stuff. So, so that was just really interesting. And I don't know if I haven't checked. I wouldn't know where to find them, but and as far as I know, this is the first time that anyone's mentioned these. So, yeah.
I do like their visual style. Like, I mean, for what it is, I mean, I would take that over, you mentioned DVC having sort of like thrown a booth together to kind of pitch the sales. I think this is a clever way to find that balance. I'm curious. So I don't know. I've never noticed when I was down there, but in the Soarin' that you guys have out there, do you have ads for Adventures by Disney in the post show?
No.
Yeah, because that's something they do in Epcot, where when you're walking out, they have a few, and they're like really simple, like posters, not in this style where they're like heavily stylized, but same idea. Like, here are a few of the spots from Soarin' around the world and Adventures by Disney. So I wasn't sure if this was like precedented for elsewhere over in California. But yeah, it looks like they're starting to push it more.
I think it'd be fun if we called that number live on stream and booked a cruise. Just kidding. Yeah, I think
I don't
look
think
really
they do
neat.
cruises on Adventures by Disney.
Oh, well, we can book a horseback cruise of Yellowstone. I don't know. But yeah, I do like the way the posters look. I think they look neat. I don't really think a lot of people will necessarily care about the smaller. I mean, I guess the text is small enough at the bottom with the phone number. You can almost barely. I didn't notice it the first time Alex sent me these images. I just thought they were really cool posters that he saw and he wanted to show on the stream. But yeah, now that I saw those, I don't necessarily think people will get up close with a magnifying glass to try and read the phone number.
Honestly, people didn't even notice them. They've been there for a week and a half apparently, and no one's got it yet. So I don't think anyone's really seen their addition into the park.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I think they look really. I'd like to hang one up in my room right back there. But anyways, we do have one last bit of I guess this can all wrap under the umbrella of Alex in the Parks. Alex sent me a very neat, or I guess interesting, I don't really know what to make of it, interesting video of a survey that he took from Disney. Was it yesterday that you took this survey, I believe?
I did it today.
Today? Okay. So
did it this morning.
I'll go ahead and play this, and hopefully it doesn't set my computer on fire. I'm not using Chrome this time. I switched to Firefox, you guys, so hopefully it's all good. But let's see, Alex, why don't you go ahead and explain what this survey is while I play this?
Yeah, so when you go to Disneyland, sometimes you have people that ask you if you'd like to submit your email address so that way Disney can send you a survey. So I do it all the time because they always catch me and I can never say no. So I decided to do the survey, and it was really interesting. This is the first time I've ever seen them do this, but they had asked me like if I had visited with a bunch of characters and stuff, and which I had said no. At that point I was like, I should be recording this. So I started recording, and as you can see, I got to the page where it asked about attractions and things like that. And so it was just interesting because it listed every attraction in the whole park. It listed every show in the whole park, asking me what things I did on my last visit. And so I answered honestly. I went and did a bunch of that stuff. And so, yeah. So, and I think it's very important to say that we probably shouldn't draw too much or too many conclusions from this survey. I know a lot of people would say, "Oh, are these attractions on the chopping block or something?" But it's like, because that's the first thing that came to my mind. But I think really it's more that Disney wants to see what, God, I don't know any sports metaphors, what the playing field looks like. I don't know. Just bear with me here. I think they just want to see what the numbers look like. What did people do, when they visited, and did they enjoy the stuff? Because amongst a few of the attractions that I selected, it asked me, would you visit these again? And it listed all the attractions. So it asked me, would you visit these again? And I said yes to all of them, actually. And then it asked, how many did you ride any of these more than once? And yeah, I think I rode Haunted Mansion twice that day. So I put that down and stuff like that. So I just thought it was really interesting because they really want to see what attractions are people visiting. And yeah, it's possible that when it comes to like the Main Street Cinema, which was on there and I selected that I entered it, they will, they'll probably figure out what's the least popular stuff at Disneyland. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to rip it out. It probably means that they're going to find other ways to draw people into it. So we'll have to, keep an eye on that in the future.
Alex,
just to interject there real quick, this is a really funny coincidence, but last week I went to Hollywood Studios. Same thing. I was approached by somebody. I try to exude that energy because, like any other YouTuber, I need to tell the world what my opinion is. So I'm like, yes, give me all the surveys. And it's like, looking at the video, it was exactly the same format, but for Hollywood Studios. What rides did you do? What shows did you do? What characters did you meet? So, I agree with what you're saying there. I think it is very much they want to get just an overview of just how people are, going about the parks. Usually if there's like a specific issue, they like slip it in there. It'll be like 30 questions and there'll be like one about bathrooms. And then you find out the whole survey was just about that question. But it's interesting to see they're doing it in Disneyland too at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I want to say in 2015 or maybe 2014, the survey had asked if Tomorrowland were entirely replaced with a Star Wars-based land, would you visit it? I immediately clicked no. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, you never know what these questions will end up turning out to be or what they're trying to figure out from it. But yeah, I think you're right. It's important to keep an objective perspective on this because it could mean absolutely nothing to us,
Alex, I'm more disappointed that you didn't visit Star Wars Path of the Jedi when you were there. I mean, the greatest attraction in Tomorrowland, and you skipped right by it.
If there is one thing on that survey that I want them to get rid of, that would be it.
I don't think I've seen it. Anyways, yeah, quick little Alex in the parks right there. And like I said, we are going to get into some very, very interesting stuff. Continuation from last week's show, like I said. But before we get into that, let's take a little break to acknowledge the show's sponsors. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams, just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. Alrighty, and like I said, like I promised you guys last week, we will continue on this discussion. It's very interesting. Right after, well, I guess not necessarily right after that episode, there was an article published by He Who Must Not Be Named News Today about exactly what we were talking about on the show last week. And I do believe this was sort of rumored in the past on that same website, but I'm going to go ahead and disregard that previous article that they put out and just go ahead and say that they got it directly from our podcast. So I'd like to say congratulations to Alex. You've made mainstream Disney news. Big round of applause.
What?
Alex, oh my gosh. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the quote-unquote black box, quote-unquote flex ride. Yeah, now.
I didn't know what I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, big congratulations to Alex for breaking that story to the whole world. If you guys missed last week's discussion on this with Orange Grove 55, you can go back to that week, that past episode 97. We sort of laid the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about today, what the whole attraction is. I guess we should sort of reiterate what it is that we're talking about, because people wouldn't necessarily know what a flex ride is. So Alex, since you're the first person that brought this to all of our attention, why don't you go ahead and re-explain to us what this whole concept is?
Do you think he watches our show?
I mean, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say yes. So
okay, so as they call this a black box ride, which I haven't heard that term before, but basically the idea is it's a giant empty building where all the sets and ride vehicles can move about or be adjusted into this one building. So it's very different from a ride show building like we have today, where there's a lot of permanent walls and a lot of permanent track fixtures, things like that. This kind of space is designed to be a lot like a sound stage where they film movies, where stuff looks permanent but is really very temporary. And even the ride vehicles are trackless, and they can roam about any square inch of the building. But with each iteration of theme put into the building, they can change up the ride layout simply by reprogramming the ride vehicles, as opposed to building an all new track like they would with a ordinary brick and mortar ride show building. So anyway, the other thing too is that a lot of the sets, instead of being full elaborate sets, a lot of them are mainly projection based, as well as there will be like some props. The idea is to have like props and set pieces that can be easily like wheeled out of the building. And according to the article, there's also supposedly going to be like the ability to put animatronics that can also be easily removable. Animatronics themselves are not generally easily removable from an attraction. Usually they sit upon a base which is like bolted or welded into the floor structure of the building, things like that. But these are designed to be on movable bases and things like that. So the idea is that you risk very little by installing very inexpensive features to create a ride that, if it were not to be popular, could easily be changed out with something that could be more popular. Mm-hmm. And so, if I may just insert my opinion here, it would be when Matt starts laughing, you know, opinion's not going to be good. So, my opinion on this is that it's a really cheap way to entertain people, which is not something that Walt Disney had originally intended. It was never about saving a buck. It was about how can we increase the experience, make everything better? How can we plus things with every step of the way? It was always about innovating for the sake of the experience. And how can you say that you're doing that when you're creating something that's designed to be Velcroed on and you just rip off the features, you know, whenever you need to change something out? And you can't possibly create an extremely immersive environment with something based on movie screens and a few roll-away props. You know, it's just a really cheap way of building a building, and it just shows that they don't want to invest too much in it. And it makes sense from a business perspective, because from a business perspective, you want to make business decisions that have as very little risk as possible, so that way you can maximize your profits and maintain a stable business. But once again, Walt Disney was known for being a risk taker, because he knew that when the stakes were high, the payoff could be, exorbitantly high. So I hope I used that word correctly. But yes. So that's my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think this idea is very delicate and potentially dangerous, because when you talk about like all the details of what it entails and what it could be, all I can think about is how awful it would be if that became the norm for rides at these parks, because everything you said I fully agree with. It's kind of lazy and cheap, and that's not what these rides are supposed to be. However, at the same time, I can acknowledge that there is a really cool freedom that this kind of design brings. And if it's limited to just a ride in the park and a ride in Hollywood Studios, then I think it'd be a cool idea, especially, and this is the important part, they have to live up to that freedom. If this is the whole like, yeah, it's a black box ride and we can swap out the scenes if something goes wrong, and then it sits there and is the same ride for 5-10 years, then not only does it, fail because it's kind of cheap and lacks that sort of permanent and personalized design that a ride does, but it fails because it's not even using the feature that it was sort of built around. But now imagine if you have a ride like this where every 3 months or 4 months or maybe 6 months on a more realistic scale, they change up the ride and we start to see new attractions in this building at a rate that we've never seen in theme parks before. I think, limited to that one space, it could be a really cool idea. Just imagine, like, I was starting to think of like all the possibilities of something like this, and this is where my brain goes. I don't think they'd ever do this, but can you imagine if they went for 1 year only through CGI and screens? We're recreating Horizons, and you get to re-ride Horizons, and a year later we're going to swap it out with something else. It'll have a few animatronics, maybe a few set pieces, mostly screen, but to like relive the attraction that way, that would be, I think, a really cool idea. Now, will Disney do that? I don't know. The current Disney doesn't seem like they're ones to jump on that much creativity, but that's where I see the potential in an idea like this. You'd have to keep it limited because this should not be the norm for rides. But man, if you have one of them and you take that freedom and you actually use it and you change things up frequently, that'd be a really cool idea and something worth, I think, exploring.
Yeah, and I think this idea really does hinge on what Rob said, is if this actually comes to fruition, and if they actually do swap it out, without keeping it sitting dormant for the same attraction for, like Rob said, however many years in the future. I do think this is a neat idea. Like Rob said, if it's limited to just one attraction in California Adventure and Hollywood Studios. But I mean, the Disney, I don't know what I'm trying to say. The other Disney half of me would say that this is really lazy. Just wheeling in props, changing a couple screens is not necessarily what I feel like the Walt Disney Company, or I guess the Disney parks, should be representing. I mean, sure, screens are cool and all. You can do a lot with screens that you can't do with physical props and scenes. But, I mean, like I said, it's a very interesting topic, nonetheless, and I do want to bring in someone from the stretching room here. Let's see, work in progress again, everybody. Stretching room, work in progress. Still haven't figured this out 100%. So let's go ahead and let's see. We are going to be bringing in Mr. T. Will here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey. Okay. There's that delay again.
Alrighty, so
Okay, I think
Mr.
it's gone
T-Will,
now.
what are your overall thoughts, I guess, on this quote-unquote black box, quote-unquote flex ride attraction being brought into the Disney parks?
I actually remember when this story was floated around. It was actually like this technically started with an article by Tom's Clickbait, as I like to call it, and actually it sort of kind of deemed it was deemed valid by reliable insiders from the WDW Magics that I like to scour about. But this is the first time I've been hearing of it going to DCA, though I think it has been hinted that it could like go to other places. Anyway, the one interesting thought with the black box is that it could possibly be a saving grace in one aspect, to where they could throw their IP overlays and ideas like that into there instead of pulling a Mission Breakout on, say, Mr. Toad. You know, they classic ride being completely switched out for the hot new thing of them. Again, it's repeating what you guys said, but the issue really is if they can keep up with that, and Disney has shown that they really don't. Like when Star Tours came up, it was supposed to be reprogrammable for a lot of times. Now, admittedly, that's because it was super popular, so they didn't have to change it. But something like Toy Story Mania, change out the games, and they haven't changed out the games since the third movie came out.
Yeah.
And they only changed one of them, and that's about it. When it comes to being flexible with a ride, Disney tends to be very cheap and just kind of be like, whatever. And so this idea of, even with Disney's even if Disney wants to have this flexibility, they never really take that opportunity, or at least they rarely do so. The other big issue is, for me, is that it's kind of a continuing mentality that's kind of coming out from the Chapek regime, so to speak, because even under Stags, and I would even argue under Pressler, if we want to bring up another he who must not be named, they still thought within they may have had short-term thoughts, but their works were supposed to be kind of have a timelessness to it. Like Tomorrowland '98 was supposed to be timeless. DCA 1.0 was supposed to be hip and relevant, but still kind of last for decades. They didn't, Stags, even when taking something like Avatar, managed to create a timeless land out of that with Pandora. But with Chapek, it feels much less about creating something timeless, and he gives off this mentality with many of his projects, like Mission Breakout and Pixar Pier, that he's immediately for the short. Doesn't give I don't think he even has a long-term memory, if we want to be that cynical. But it's maybe I'm projecting a bit, but this is kind of the mentality that I'm getting really from Bob Chapek, that that he is supremely thinking about what is the flavor of the month, and if we can get people in within that month, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
So something like this appeals to him. It's, you could get it in for like $30 million at most, and then there you go, bada bing, bada boom. You have a Doctor Strange ride, and in Hollywood studios, there we go. Let's make the money. And then when it's like, okay, Doctor Strange is not relevant, can we update it? You mean we have to invest money? No. Because that has been Chapek's big thing. Like, he's saved money after Shanghai, cut budgets across Star Wars and Toy Story, and then putting up cheap projects. So it's this kind of growing mentality of being much more instant, even more so than Paul Pressler. Of think of the now, don't care about the future, and do it as cheaply as possible. So this is indicative of a project of a mentality. This project, if it were to fully come to fruition. I'm sorry, I'm kind of being loaded like that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, T-Will does bring up some very interesting points, and thank you, Mr. T-Will, for joining us today on the show. We always appreciate having T-Will here on the show. He's in the chat sometimes. So yeah, thank you, Mr. T-Will.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree. I think that, in today's day and age, people are so used to getting what they want as soon as possible, and the past, the way that Disney has done things is if a character or a movie was extremely popular, it would take sometimes 2 decades or more before Disney finally said, all right, let's invest the money and turn it into a ride, because it was a very big investment, and so, because they're not just investing money into a technology, they're investing money into a piece of land that, for all intents and purposes, will be unusable for anything else until that building is repurposed. And so it's it's an investment of space. And so I think, like, when it comes to something that's really popular, and people want to see a ride or see it turned into a ride, it would take way too long to do. I mean, look at when everyone wanted a Frozen ride as soon as possible, and Disney couldn't pull it off. They ended up going, to look at Maelstrom, and then going, all right, well, this is something we can retheme. And it took forever to do it. But then when they got it done, it turned out to be this popular Frozen ride. But unfortunately, it was not the ride that everybody was hoping it would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was so limited to what was there before. So there's an interesting thing about that, in the sense that with this black box ride thing, it's like, true, you get what you want much faster, but then you have the Maelstrom problem, where it's not what you want it to be. So, and then let's say it's a really popular ride. I mean, do you really get rid of that ride, that black box ride, if it's super popular, but you got something else that's coming down the line, down the chute, and they want to make that into a ride? So it's just like, imagine, let's take, for example, the movie Onward. What if that turns out to be a really good movie, and they put it in a black box ride, but people say, oh no, that should be like a flying type of attraction. That shouldn't be a trackless ride vehicle. And then Disney goes, well, we already have it. It's super popular. We can't get rid of it because it's so popular, but then we got something that's coming down the line that we need to make into a ride also. So that's interesting. Like, what would they do? What could you do?
If I were Disney, this is the cynical part of me, then you get rid of it, sell all the merch on it going away, build that proper ride, and then like 2 years later, 5 years later, go, we're bringing it back for a limited time only. I think that's, and that's a cynical part of me. I hope they don't actually do anything like that. That'd be awful. Please, Disney, don't listen to me. It's interesting because a lot of it sounds like, in a weird way, 90s era Disney, but for rides, because I think back to when, Toy Story was the hot new movie, so you got a Toy Story parade, or Aladdin was the new movie and you got an Aladdin parade. And they had this trend where they were throwing together parades really quickly for whatever the thing they were promoting was, or a stage show for Pocahontas, or Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, there's so many examples there. And so would this be that ride equivalent? And I think you raise a really good point. And if it is too successful, will they be afraid to change it? I'd say Disney now totally would be afraid to change it. And then the scariest outcome there is they go, well, we'll build another black box building over here, and this will be the one we change, and now we keep it. And then that creates that dangerous precedent of turning it into a park of what effectively sounds like more temporary versions of like Transformers and what Spider-Man and Universal, where it's just rooms with big screens and then vehicles. And while that's not like a bad thing to do, one of, yeah, I would be very afraid. It's almost like this idea is a hammer, and we're sitting there going like, look at all the cool things you could build with this hammer. And then you see Chapek over there bashing windows, and you're like, oh no, maybe he shouldn't have the hammer. Maybe somebody else should have this hammer. So, great idea. Maybe wait until like 21 when Iger's gone, and hopefully there's a mix up of, the people at the top, and it's less Chapek, and then somebody else can do it.
Oh, geez. Just thinking about this is like, for me, there's no good outcome to this. I might be a purist, but I'm really into the old fashioned, fully immersive rides. I don't like the idea of a ride that is based on projections and, and easily removable props and sets. Like, even this Spider-Man ride that's coming to DCA, I mean, I don't know why I care. I'm not going to ride it, but I mean, like the fact that you're going to be going from screen to screen to screen, I mean, Midway Mania, I know, because I know a lot of people are going to be telling me, well, Alex, what about Midway Mania? And it's like, well, Midway Mania is interesting because it's a Midway game. So I guess that kind of works. I still don't prefer it, though. I would have rather have seen some kind of fully immersive Toy Story ride as opposed to some kind of video game. But that's just me. But at the same time, I'll take Midway Mania over a black box ride. Yeah, I will. I'll take it over a black box ride.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know. I do see the positives and the negatives that you guys are bringing up. I try to put myself in the middle of everything, I guess. Not with all things, but I'm trying to with this one thing. Because I do see a lot of the great things that could I mean, if this indeed does happen, this is probably going to be like, I mean, I'm sure Universal would maybe copy this to one of their parks because it's such a neat idea. I mean, you can't not say that it's not a neat idea to do for an attraction. Almost immediately interchangeable attractions, just push a button and from Spider-Man then it goes to Doctor Strange, or even if it's not Marvel themed, like any other example you could bring out. It is a neat idea. But it's almost like it's an idea that Disney would not ever come up with. It does really feel like a Universal idea to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I could picture this being like, oh my gosh, Bob Iger's in the chat right now. Black Box is an amazing concept. You heard it here first. But anyways, yeah, I do really see this as more of like a Universal type attraction. Like, I can't think of any like Universal IPs right off the top of my head. Maybe like Harry Potter. Build a Black Box, theme it around Harry Potter, and once the new Harry Potter movie or book is not as popular anymore, replace it with I don't know, Jaws or something. It just doesn't feel like the kind of thing that Disney would necessarily do, because it does feel, I keep flip-flopping, it does feel really cheap. And like I said, I'm trying to see both the positives and negatives. And I brought this up last week on the show. When they first announced the overlay, Tower of Terror overlay to Guardians of the Galaxy, I think construction for that lasted maybe like 6 months. Honestly,
it was real short.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself in the back of my head, if they can re-theme a horror attraction like Twilight Zone Tower of Terror to this happy, exhilarating adventure with the Guardians of the Galaxy, they can do that with any attraction almost, it seems like. And in the back of my head I was thinking, what if this Guardians overlay is temporary, and then maybe they're just gonna get rid of it once the new movie came out and put Tower of Terror back. That was like me trying to hold on to hope that Tower of Terror wouldn't be gone. But yeah, it was a really quick turnaround time, and I don't really think the two are comparable, Black Box and Mission Breakout. But then again, you do have like I said last week, the Halloween overlay that they do for Mission Breakout, the Monsters After Dark, where it's just screens. You can replace the screens with anything, and anything Guardians of the Galaxy related, and it'd still be like a brand new attraction almost. And that's what they did with Monsters After, I think that's what it's called, Monsters After Dark, where I think it was only after like 8 p.m. or something, they'd switch out the screens, switch out the scenes for different ones where it's almost like a horror ride, something like that. I haven't been on it personally, but if they can do it with that, then I mean, I'm sure that was maybe, I don't know, some sort of test for this attraction, because that, I don't know why I keep comparing it to Mission Breakout, but it does really seem, they do have a lot of parallels in my opinion. Yeah, and it is a
You know why, Matt?
interesting,
You know why you keep comparing it to Mission Breakout?
because it's Marvel, right?
No, because in your heart of hearts, you know that's not a good ride.
I mean, I'm not gonna
If
deny.
it's any help, I will gladly trade Florida's Tower of Terror for Mission Breakout because I loved it, and I get a lot of hate for saying this, but I kind of wish it came here instead of over in California.
Traitor.
I have no sense of just regard for any of these. Change them. Like, there's a little part of my brain that I think is just Eisner, and it's just like, let's do all these ideas. I guess there are two things on my mind. One really short one is, one thing that would change my opinion really in the positive. We're talking about how temporary all these pieces can be. Can you imagine if they did something where it's like Marvel Summer, every 3 weeks we're changing it to a different Marvel character, like that sort of thing to keep pulling people back in to check out the new experience? Like that I think would be kind of cool. But it raises this question, I think, of like, okay, the inside might change, but how do you theme this thing externally? Like, they talk about putting it in DCA and Hollywood Studios, but like, what is that building themed like? How do you rationalize that it's changing themes so often? Are you changing the exterior too? Or are you creating some sort of narrative explanation for why the inside changes? Like, how do you even go about that?
You know what else too is, see, I know a lot of people are going to be telling, well, Alex, you're too rigid. You should be more flexible about, about Disney and stuff like that. But the reason why I'm so rigid, when it comes to Disney and its quality and stuff like that, is because Disney is like a teenager. It's going to push your limits. It's going to test to see where that boundary is. And if you keep being lenient, if you keep, saying, okay to other things, then they're going to keep going to the limit. And so it's like how, Disney's going to keep saying, how cheap can we make a ride? I mean, right now we're talking about sets that can roll out of the building, within a night. What if one day it's like, oh, the sets are inflatable, it's like, they're like, it's this new technology where we install a little fan inside in it and it magically makes the set rise from the floor. It's like, no, it's inflatable. So it's just like, or the ride vehicle. It's like, we have this new technology, but it's a Cassimber in the back who's like running the whole thing, like just pushing the vehicle along. So it's just how, it's just like, I worry about how cheap they can make things. And when Disney California Adventure 1.0 came out, it was very unpopular. But what scared me was that there were a lot of people who still liked it. Yeah. And the reason why that scared me is because as long as there's a growing number of people who like something that is not Disney, that doesn't match the Disney quality, it means that there's a possibility that lack of quality can continue to be created at Disney. So it's like, that's why I'm so rigid with what I believe. It's because I know what Disney's capable of doing. It's just that they don't want to do that because it costs too much money, but they have the money for it. Yeah.
Like I said, this is a very, I guess, divisive topic. I don't know. I love this whole idea of us just like bashing, I guess not bashing Disney. I don't know. I love this topic. I really do. I think this is necessary. I don't know. I keep flip-flopping.
I mean, I think that sort of unease is basically a good sign of like the technology is impressive, but it is a dangerous precedent you might be setting, and it puts a lot of things at risk that are known to Disney. I don't think there's a clear cut like it's a great thing, it's an awful thing. I think it's like any new technology, it could be used for good or evil, and if I really like the idea that like if we're not careful, like these parks will just be all black boxes and dance parties, and then what are we gonna do? So like it'll be real interesting if it turns out to be true. I imagine the internet's gonna kind of blow up over the Disney fan community because it is not so clear cut for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess Rob brought up an interesting point of how you're going to theme the exterior of these buildings. Because, I mean, it's not going to be like a big black box. I feel like that's just what I keep picturing in my head. And I feel like I had to point that out to people. It's not going to be like a big, that's just like the term that we're using.
I mean, have you seen our Guardians over here in Epcot? It's a big blue box. So, don't write it off completely.
You know what I think is, it's not easy, but I think the exteriors of the buildings could be easily like ambivalent, I think is the word. Like if you look at the concept art for the exterior of the Spider-Man attraction, it doesn't look like it would, like Spider-Man would be in there. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I mean, granted, you can't have like, a giant Spider-Man statue out there, although I wouldn't put it past Disney to do that. But I mean, look at Jesse and the Critter Carousel. But I do think that they could create. I think that what Disney would do is they would create buildings that look like, ultra sleek, ultra modern buildings, but on the inside is, some kind of attraction. And all I can think of at the moment is the way that the Spider-Man building looks like. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't look like Spider-Man would be in there.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna bring up, because if you want to, I think the rumor was that they were gonna put this somewhere in Hollywood Land, but I don't really buy that. I do see this working better as a concept in the Spider-Man attraction, because like Alex said, that building exterior does not look like it would house a Spider-Man attraction. I mean, granted, I guess the whole program, whatever, I guess the lore of the land, it's like web or something. So web stands for something, so it has, like Spider-Man innuendos, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that building doesn't necessarily look like it'd be a Spider-Man attraction. You really could replace that with like any other Marvel character, and it wouldn't really make much of a difference as long as you change the marquee outside. I'm just really interested to see if this does end up happening, how they're going to theme the outside in Hollywood Studios, because I'm trying to like picture, and unless they have like some big plan that they haven't unveiled for like a Marvel Land and Hollywood Studios, which is probably not going to happen. But
I did hear something, and I don't know if it was from that article that we were talking about, or if it's from, because I first learned of the black box ride from the insider that I know, and I don't remember who I read it or heard it from first, but I did hear something about like the one at DCA, as being in the Hollywood Studios area, and that it possibly looking like the Grauman's Chinese Theater in LA.
Okay.
And the idea was that it's a theater, so anything could be playing inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's possible that maybe these buildings will be like types of theaters in any park. I mean, imagine like, in Tomorrowland. Oh no, I'm gonna give Disney ideas. So, never mind. Idea. But yeah. So,
guys,
I'm done talking.
I think I cracked the code. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is a black box attraction, you guys. I cracked it. That's exactly
You're
what
only
is
just
happening.
figuring that out.
That would be man. I mean, I think that's a great narrative way to, as lazy as it is, that would be a great narrative way to just like, it's a movie theater. You're going into this movie and then this movie, and we're going to change out the movie every time. But I can see that's how, that would be a good way for them to do it if they had to do it. I hope they don't do it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, God, no.
I'm just now connecting the dots. That'd be, it's perfect.
I'm not as familiar with the space because I haven't been there a lot, but would you think that whole block of building for the Animation Academy, would that be big enough to like gut and turn into a black box building?
I don't think it is. I mean, I think they would have to bulldoze the surrounding buildings in order to enlarge it because the animation building itself isn't quite big enough. These trackless rides take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
I think you would have to combine a bunch of those buildings, which is why they were saying that they think like where Monsters Inc. is all the way up till Hollywood Boulevard, which is a huge space, but it makes sense for a trackless ride. I mean, look at the Rise the Resistance ride.
Mm-hmm.
It takes up a huge footprint and it's 2 levels. So and yeah, it's epic, so that's why it's so big, but I mean like it's also kind of like, well, all the trackless rides are like super huge. Yeah.
It sort of feels like this is like a parasite we're talking about, like we're examining like Ebola or something. How is it going to spread to the other parks in the world? I don't know.
Where's it going to latch on to first?
It spreads. It spreads with every clap of applause. It spreads with every with every giddy Disney fan going, "Oh boy!" That's how it spreads, you guys.
Yeah. Anyways, nonetheless, this is a very interesting topic that, again, I'm sure we're going to be following very closely here on the show. If there are any new updates regarding this, we will let you guys know in the future. But moving on to our final, smaller topic, sort of ease our way out of this discussion. This topic was brought to my attention by someone on our Discord server. Link in the description, wink. If we could bring any of our favorite Disney animated film into live action, remade into live action, which film would it be? And when I told this topic to Alex, he was very, very hesitant. And you can see his face right now. Yeah, I do think this is an interesting topic. As you guys may or may not know, Disney is starting to remake their classic animated movies into live action. Kind of low-key. Not very many people know about them. I don't think they've made a lot of money. But I feel like it'd be fun to sort of pitch our own, favorite, not necessarily favorite, our own ideas for live action films. And I guess we can each do 2. I have 2. So I guess I'll go ahead and start off. This doesn't necessarily have to be what we think would be best adapted into live action. It's just maybe we have a favorite, cult movie that isn't as popular that Disney made a few years ago that we'd like to see brought back into the spotlight. Maybe we think live action would do that. And I think the perfect film for this would be Treasure Planet. I've been preaching Treasure Planet. Please, Disney, make a sequel. Please remake it or something. And I feel like a live action Treasure Planet movie would not only calm me, because I do love the original movie. I feel like it would be another interesting way to sort of give the children of today the same story that I don't know, their grandparents read about in the original Treasure Island book. If movie was based on the book, I think. I don't know. I've never seen the original movie, but I love Treasure Planet, and I'd love to see it be remade into live action. Big fan of the story, big fan of the characters, the score. I mean, it probably wouldn't have the same score, but yeah, that's my number 1 pick would be a Treasure Planet. And let's go ahead and move on next to Rob. What would be your, I guess not in any particular order, but what would be your number 1 film to bring into live action?
I mean, obviously Bolt and Home on the Range are the 2 that need it. My first, purely because I'm a fan of the movie and I love the music and would be interested in seeing how they would adapt it, would be Hercules. I mean, I feel like it's a matter of time at this point.
Yeah.
This whole topic, I feel like in 2 years is going to be moot because they're going to have done them all. But okay, this answer is kind of cheating because one, it wouldn't be a direct remake. It'd be sort of like a spiritual remake. And 2, I think with The Lion King, we've learned that live action doesn't actually mean live action anymore. It could just also just
Yeah.
mean animated in a fully different way. I say give us a third Fantasia that is extremely expressive
okay.
and artistic and mixes CG and traditional animation and live action, and just use all the technology we have today to do sort of like a spiritual third Fantasia, essentially. New music
Okay.
and everything.
I would be on board with that. I love the original. I don't think I've ever seen the second one, but I do feel like it would be interesting to sort of see what the artists that are at Disney today have their take on what a Fantasia of 2019 would be. I like that idea. Fantasia 2020, Arc D stuff 3607. We are just Disney. If you're watching this, don't do this, but I mean, it would be a neat idea. Alex, what about you?
Well, this was a very difficult topic because I don't really believe in, movie remakes unless you're improving on the movie. And to which I have to say, I would never choose a movie that was good to begin with because, I firmly believe in don't tamper with perfection. So I chose movies that I think had potential but didn't quite hit the mark, and I think that if they were done in live action, that they would probably look and seem better, especially with better writing. So my first movie that I would say, and you guys probably, none of you probably know what this movie is. It's a Disney movie called The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Nightmare-inducing The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh my gosh. So I watched it as a little kid and I really liked it. I mean, granted, it had scenes that were just kind of like, ugh, but it had a good potential. It was, I mean, and it's just your average adventure movie where it's just like, characters get lost and they need to find their home again. It's the same idea, and you can do so much with that. And I think that the characters had potential for being lovable and admirable. And I think that in today's movie making way, I think that they could do some amazing stuff with it. So that's my idea is to take a poorly done movie and then kind of make it a whole lot better.
The Brave.
What if they branded it as Toy Story 4, but without? It's like, because it's in a way, it's very much like Toy Story, but it's not toys, it's appliances, and also it's way darker because they have songs like "Worthless" where they sing about how worthless they all are. It's a very different era of Disney, but I think that would be pretty cool because I do think it is a lot less known today than it should be.
I mean, I'm looking at the IMDb, 7 stars out of 10. That's not necessarily a bad movie, Alex. So I have
it wasn't a horrible movie. It definitely wasn't on the list of Disney's best movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things where it had potential. I mean, even the beginning of the movie was good. But then as you went further into the movie, it was kind of like, whoever wrote this just lost all their, their momentum and their happiness. So it's just but yeah, I think that movie could definitely be improved. And I think it has potential.
Okay. Well, I'll have to put that on my
yes,
list.
Melanie, the Brave Little Toaster was Disney. Yeah.
I'll have to put this on my list of Disney movies I have not seen that I'll need to watch. So
then you could sell the Disney branded toaster and the electric blanket.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Yes.
The amount of merchandising is just the movie would pay for itself in merchandising. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, I would buy that toaster.
But here's the problem. If they were to do the Brave Little Toaster again, they would modernize it, so it'd be like a convection toaster and like an iPhone, and
it would connect to Wi-Fi.
Exactly. Yeah, there'd be like a router and it's just all this. And then would it be even worse is just to hedge their bets, they would do brand integration with all the real brands. So it wouldn't just be a Bluetooth speaker. It'd be a Bose Bluetooth speaker. And Disney, don't listen to anything I just said in the last 30 seconds, please.
It writes itself, Disney. Please listen to what Rob was saying. That'd be amazing.
But how cool,
awful ideas.
how cool would it be though if like the desk lamp in the story was actually like a Luxo desk lamp, you know? So it's
That
like kind
would
of
be
ties
cool.
into Pixar. Oh god.
Meanwhile, I have no idea what they are talking about. I don't know what.
You don't, even if you don't watch the movie, just, and this is to everybody listening, go take a trip down YouTube and listen to all the songs from it, because I do think they do a good job of just getting across the tone that movie reaches at points. This was pre, Disney telling happy fairy tales in the Eisner era, and was like when they wanted to get a little bit dark with what they were telling. It was not what you'd think of like your traditional Disney movie at all.
All right. Well, like I said, I'll actually move that to the top of my list of movies that I'll need to watch, just so I can get the jokes you guys are telling. Well, I guess my second pick would be, I was a big fan of not the movie. I'm blanking on the name, the Black Cauldron. I read those books, I think in like 3rd grade, and I loved those books. And it's funny because I'm trying to think back on like what my favorite book was. I can't remember a single thing that I read about that book. I mean, I remember the cauldron and like the little dog character. And I haven't seen the animated movie that Disney made a while back. So I've heard it's bad, but I feel like I feel like that'd be a really neat way to sort of like I was saying with the first movie I said, sort of bring that source material back into the public. The books were really good, at least in my 3rd grade mind. From what I remember, they were really good, and I'd like to experience that again without having to read the books again. Just watch the movies instead of reading. And yeah, I think I've actually seen rumors about that being a thing, so I don't know if this is like cheating or anything, but yeah, Black Cauldron would be my my second pick. The Black Cauldron is now a cult classic, says Daniel. Well, I'll put that one on my list as well, along with all the other 9,000 movies I haven't seen. Yeah, I think, well, I guess if you guys have any movies you'd like to be remade into live action, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below, in the chat as well. And I do think that is going to wrap up this episode of Matterhorn Mondays. Really great episode. A lot of great discussions. There was a noise there. I don't know what that was for, but it played, and you guys could probably hear it. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and end this show here because I don't know if you guys can tell on the camera, but I'm physically sweating in my closet right now. It is so hot in here. My computer is probably running at like 100 degrees Celsius. Probably. But yeah, really great topics today. They should remake The Lion King into a live action, says Chris. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
I'll have to go see it, but I appreciate that one.
Atlantis: The Lost Empire, someone says. Okay, anyways.
That was going to be my second one.
I think I tried watching that on Netflix, but I got bored and fell asleep, so.
Same. What about Dinosaur, but they tied it into the ride?
Oh.
Like they were trying to do the first time and then actually do it this time.
I don't think I've seen.
What if they actually just tied the DVD into the ride? Just tie it into the ride. I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh my gosh. You guys, this has been a great stream. Thank you all for coming out today. And like I said, if you'd like to catch these streams live, head on over to my second channel, Matterhorn Matt Streams, and we'll sort of gauge the reaction from today's episode. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Gauge the reaction, whether or not you guys would gouge. That's not how it's. No, I see you smiling. That was the second option in my mind, but I knew. Yeah, leave in the comments down below if you guys would like to see these streamed on my main channel as well as, all the other platforms I mentioned at the beginning. We'll keep doing that if you guys like it. If not, we'll just stick to the second channel as well. And yeah, like I said, links to all the articles we refer to will be down in the description, as well as Rob's channel, his Twitter, and Alex's channel as well. Go check out those guys. They make really awesome videos. And I do think that is everything, unless you guys have any closing thoughts you'd like to say before we sign off.
Nope.
Nope. Bob Chapek, please don't make the black box. Just wait. That's all.
Sell the idea to Universal. Use the money that you sell it to bring Walt back from the dead.
Put the folder in the vault. Wait until somebody takes your place.
Great. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Anyways, again, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.